Chessman Dan, playing chess every day until I reach 1500 elo or until I beat Melina with a stick. Today's game, I am recovering a game I played as white. I played a few games today. I plan on playing more. Probably will record some of the games on shorts. However, I want to start lowering my volumes of games. And the reason being is that as I improve my elo, I don't want to get stuck in tunnel vision and just spam games without doing proper studying. So I'm going to lower my game volume and spend more time studying my openings and studying basic principles. My chess journey is a marathon, not a sprint. I'd rather be a stronger player and have a lower elo on paper than to improve, have a higher elo, and not understand chess. Regardless, that is the most recent game I played. I played as white, and playing as white, I've been practicing the London system. In this game, I just felt that all my cylinders were firing for this one. Sometimes I play the London system and I get false confidence in the sense that my opponent just plays really badly. However, in terms of the game review, my opponent also played really well, at least in the opening. He had a 94% accuracy. I had a 98. So regardless, I'm playing someone at my level who's playing pretty well as well. So let's get started. So d4 opening, my opponent responds to d5. Here, bishop b4, my opponent responds with knight to c6. Malini weenie, you've seen this in the past. What do I say about early knight c6s? They're gonna get punished. Here, pawn e3, the idea of pawn e3, defending both the bishop and the pawn, as well as starting my pyramid setup. My opponent responds with e6. Here, I move my pawn to c4. The idea being changing the London system to more of a Queen's Gambit style and to attack the c7 pawn. The c7 pawn is really weak, and if I could get to it with the proper development, I'll be on my opponent's queen side, and it's gonna be a really good day for me. Here, my opponent takes pawn to c4. I naturally respond with pawn to c4. Bishop to b4. Here, my opponent checks me, bishop to b4. This could be a tricky line against the London system, but he didn't play it well. I don't really think it's the best line, but I think my opponent would have been a better play is if he goes here, right? I defend. No, it's not. I just blundered that one. Regardless, there's an opening with that black can play, especially at lower elos, in which I get caught with these with the check on with the bishop as well as the knight. If I do play a game like that, I definitely want to recap it because it's not a that good move by any means. However, at lower ratings, I could easily lose with that sequence. Regardless, I block with knight to c6, 3. My opponent kicks out his other knight, so now we have 2 knights against 2 bishops. So my opponent is pretty well developed. If we open up the evaluation board, it's even. I have a 0.88 advantage, which means literally nothing, especially at lower elos. This type of advantages of having like a 1-point material is really only substantial once you reach higher ratings. At my rating, not at all. Here, I respond to knight e2. The computer best move whenever I get pinned by this bishop, right, because I can't move my knight because I'm being checked, is to move rook to c1. However, I usually do play that when my opponent doesn't kick out this knight. And the reason being is that I don't have to worry about my opponent castling. However, instead of just blindly defending my pieces, I also need to get in the habit of what is my opponent trying to do. Knight to e2 is really good because it allows me to castle. My opponent does castle next move and allows me to castle. At this point, we're still very even. I'm kind of proud of myself because I usually mess this one up. Usually when I get pinned by this bishop, I usually just automatically move my rook to c1. And it's not the worst move because if he takes, I take back with the rook and my rook is activated. However, now we're in the middle game. We're no longer, the moment we exchange, I mean, we're technically in the middle game already. However, once the big pieces start exchanging, we're no longer in a middle game. And my opponent has good castle. And by the time I move one move, you know, here, it takes, I'm 2 moves behind. And the idea is I don't want to be 2 moves behind, especially as white. So instead, I kick out my knight in order to open the opportunity for me to castle. Here my opponent castles, so I castle as well. My opponent kicks his bishop, pawn b6. I respond with pawn to h3. The deal with pawn to h3 is 2 main reasons. The first one, it prevents his knight from going here, causing some havoc. See, it's a blunder because I moved it. But if I wouldn't have moved it, let's just say I go here. The move knight to g4 is no longer a blunder. So that's the first reason why I kicked out my pawn to h3. The second reason is if I were to ever get pressured, let's just say he goes here. This is not the best way to attack the bishop, but I'm just trying to emphasize, hey, I need to move my bishop. I have an escape route. So that's why pawn to h3 is really good. Here my opponent moves pawn to h6. I respond with pawn to a3. Now I'm trying to kick the bishop. My opponent responds with pawn to b5. I move my bishop back. I could have taken, and in the past this happened, where I see a free bishop, but then he takes a bishop. You know, in this position, it wouldn't have been bad. We would exchange, but I don't want to exchange. I know there are, you know, once you get to a certain skill level, you are more comfortable exchanging, and I'm pretty confident that I could still win in this position. However, I don't want to exchange. If I don't want to exchange, I don't want to exchange. I just don't want to leave it up to my opponent. My whole mindset is if I'm exchanging, is on my court. It's my terms, not my opponent's. So, kick my bishop to safety. My opponent takes, I take. Yeah, what was the reason for that? I think this one probably was better than just exchanging up there. And the reason being, if I would have let my opponent exchange, so I go here, I go there, my opponent, you know, my a file would have gotten open, but I just didn't want it. You know, maybe probably would have been better. We'll see. So pawn a5, I recapture with a bishop to b5. My opponent puts bishop to a6. Here I move my rook. The idea being is if I don't take, so 2 things could happen. If I were to take, that would be a mistake because now my opponent would take with the rook and the rook is now activated. If I were to ignore it, my rook is pinned. So let's say I just go here. Now my rook is being attacked. Yes, I can take with this. I'm still winning. However, I'm trying to get in a habit of watching out for bishops because bishops is kind of my kryptonite currently. Here I move my rook out of safety, unpinning my bishop. My opponent takes bishop. I respond. Here my opponent moves his rook to b8, putting pressure on my knight. I respond with queen e2. The idea being is I'm really telling my opponent, hey, don't take my knight. This is not a fair exchange. Yeah, because look, now I'm a 5+ advantage for white. So like, there's no way my opponent's gonna take. And he took. So naturally, I take that. I take back with the queen. The reason why this exchange was really bad for black for 2 reasons. One, he gave up a rook for a knight. Yes, my knight was in a good position. However, you allowed me to take your rook and activate my queen. So now my queen's on your side. Excuse me. And it's gonna be really pesky. Here, my opponent goes queen to d5. I did have the opportunity to take. This was definitely the best computer move. I just didn't want to exchange. I knew in this position I could win. However, if we go back to the time, my opponent is thinking in between a lot of moves. So I have almost this whole exchange, barely a minute has passed for my time, but my opponent has wasted almost 4 minutes and some change. So my whole idea is I can exchange and simplify the board. However, because my opponent is losing so much time, if I could just pressure him with my queen, he could just lose on time alone. And at my low elo, it probably doesn't matter so much about time. However, I'm trying to get in the habit of using time as an advantage. In chess, you have a few variables that you have to consider. You have pieces, material, positions, and time. You could use time to your advantage. So that's my idea behind moving the queen to b7. Here my opponent responds knight to e8, defending that pawn. I respond with rook to c1. Now I have really good control of the c file. My opponent responds knight to d8, putting pressure on my queen. If I don't move, it's donezo. So here I move queen to c8. My opponent responds with knight to d6, trying to kick my queen. But here I take with the bishop. My opponent responds with queen, takes back with the queen, but I don't care because at this point, knights could be a pesky problem, especially towards the end game. Here I take that weak c7 pawn. Remember how I said earlier that c7 pawn, whenever you move that knight out, is super weak. I'm inviting an exchange. The idea being, if my opponent takes with the queen, I take back, and now I'm winning. I've been winning. Excuse me. Here, my opponent moves his knight to b7. The idea being is now he's opening up the rook. However, he left it hanging. Here, my opponent responds. Rook to d8. He's putting all his pressure this side. So what do? I move my second rook to c1. Approaching checkmate. I'm still far away from a checkmate in terms of moves, but in terms of material, it's getting pretty close. My opponent responds with rook to d7. This would have been a bad exchange. Mate in 5, actually, that would have been really good. Mate in 2, that would have been an accuracy. Oh yeah, that would have been bad. Okay, that probably would have been the best move. I didn't see that. This whole game, that definitely would have been a checkmate. However, still not as good as following checkmates. Here, I move my rook to c8 and my opponent resigns. Regardless, my opponent had 3 minutes and 40 seconds left on the clock. I have over 7, and I was just comfortably winning. And if we do the game review for this game, I'm going to show you a little bit of the accuracy. I played 1155 game rating. I don't really pay attention too much to this game ratings because I don't think it really pertains to me. I really like looking at the openings. A 98.5% accuracy in the openings versus my opponent. If it lets me show 95%. So the studying my openings is working out because a lot of my games, more and more, have shown that my accuracy is really high. However, if we go to the middle game, not the best, 72%. So, gotta do more studying. Gonna continue to play chess. Thanks for watching.